welcome back to some more of my D&D characters attempting to be turned into Sims. So today's is Amara Hugheston. So she is part of the group of the two individuals that were previously put up on the channel before her, and there is two more individuals to come after her to complete the sort of group aesthetic. And with Amara's, I am going to go ahead and say early on that there might be like a trigger warning or something with her backstory. If you're not comfortable with people being like taking advantage of / kidnapped, I'm not going to try to go too deep into it right now. Her backstory does evolve some of that, and so if you want, what I will mention before I go deep into the backstory, if you want, you can mute the video if you don't want to hear about it. So I just wanted to say that up front. It's not a big part of her character technically. Yeah, it's a tragic backstory for her, but for her, I wanted her to overcome that tragic backstory and her be a role model in a way, and like a leader for people who potentially have been in any remotely similar situations. So that's sort of like her whole thing. She still is amazing and kicking butt even afterwards, and she has learned from it and grown from it. And yeah, it sucked. It was a horrible part of her life, but she's not letting it hold her down. So, that's a big thing with Amara here. But as you may start to notice as time goes on, plus if you've seen the picture that was being put on the screen for a short while, I don't put it on the whole screen because, the whole time for the video, just because it is this big rectangular white square just on the screen, and I would rather show the sim stuff going on mostly and not cover it up with this, but I at least want you to see what I'm using for reference, because since these are my own D&D characters, there is no obviously pictures or something. I'm not copying something else. These are just my own creations, and since I drew them, I was like, let me at least show their drawing a little bit beforehand so they sort of know where the idea was trying to go or what I'm trying to do. So with Amara here, she actually is, she's not cyborg technically, but she has a robotic leg and a robotic arm, and with it has sort of a steampunky feel. And I will say I actually did try to search stuff for her just because I knew I did not have anything. And I had this leg thing at one point. I think it was more for a leg of an amputee, and it was like it was back from the olden days, but it at least got I thought it still fit with the theme and look I wanted for her, and also put across that, her one leg is different. As far as the arm, I did technically find a cybernetic arm that is on the right side of her. And that's where hers is, and I don't know if you could also put it on the left. Actually, I didn't fool with it too much. But it just looked way too futuristic, and I just did not like how it looked. So I'm using some of these extra robotic pieces, you can see these pieces in her face, and on her arms, but sadly they're on both arms and both legs. I really wish that they wasn't, because her thing is it's only one leg and it's only one arm, and then technically, she does have some things coming out, on her face. It's hard to see that little detail unless you're looking really closely at the picture, so on the video you probably couldn't see it, but she does have these little, wiring pieces coming down on her face from the top of her head, and her headband is actually connected to those pieces. Her headband's technically supposed to be permanent and a part of her. So yeah! And her eyes do have a slight cybernetic feel to them, but she is a human. She is a brute fighter, which I think brute was an unearthed arcana that never still hasn't got past being that, but I liked that for her, so that's what I gave her for her subclass. Basically, her main goal is try to protect and save people that are going through similar situations to her. If she sees them, she's gonna be the first one helping them, no matter what it is, she's gonna jump in to help that person. And eventually find the person who did what they did to her. Because ultimately, when I get to the backstory in more details, you'll know that she doesn't actually know where that person is anymore. That person sort of stays low-key in the first place, so she wants to find them. But in the meantime, she also is still continuing on with her new group of friends here. Like, she really does want to find them, but that's like a goal that, you know, is the underlining goal, but it's not necessarily focused. So, like, if they go into a town because Shamira needs to go into that town, you know, she might ask around, she might look around, but it's not, like, the big concern for her, so, as the main thing. So, you know, if she learns something, finds out where they are, that's just a plus, but if she doesn't, she's okay for now. So she's like, I'm just still gonna be good, I'm gonna have my own day, and I'm gonna enjoy my life. So, okay, so this is the part where I'm gonna go a little bit deeper into our backstory, so if you want to mute the video for a bit, feel free to do so. I will put like a little red X for while I'm talking about the backstory on the video, and I will turn it into like a green check when you can turn the sound back on, because obviously you can't see me, so I can't do any like cues to the camera or anything. But yeah, so if you want to mute the video now here is your chance, if that's something you think is going to trigger anything or something like that. I know that hers is probably one of my more closer to real things that happen in real life and darker backstories, so I definitely wanted to just let people know ahead of time. But, so yeah, if you want to mute it now, go ahead and mute it. I'll give it like a few moments to give you time to mute it so that you can make sure that you're able to still watch the video, but you don't hear anything that you don't want to, so. Okay, so with Amara's backstory, she did come from, like, a family that didn't necessarily have a whole lot of money. They wasn't necessarily struggling, but they definitely didn't have a lot of money. They didn't have wealth. And eventually, you know, she wanted to go out on her own and try to do things, but it's really hard to sometimes get out on your own, and, you know, having a hard time trying to find somewhere that will take her, because, you know, she may not have the skills for it, or who knows, there could be varying reasons why someone wouldn't take her for the job, but she struggled to find a job. Eventually, she did end up working in, like, the field that is, like, you know, the sex field, but not necessarily, more of, like, dancing, like, strippers and things like that. Whatever you would call that in, like, because D&D is set in, like, an olden world, almost, sort of. Like, obviously, there's ways around trying to bring technology. I've heard, like, using magical devices and stuff like that to almost mimic what a phone would do, but back in those times, so, you know, it's set in an olden time with some modern twist on it. Obviously, like, she's got robotic pieces on her, so, and cyborgs are actually a thing for D&D now. I think they officially, like, put out something for the different limbs, and, like, if you have a different, like, robotic pieces and not just being a whole robot, like the Warforged. But anyway, but at this point, she actually did not have the robotic arm or the leg. She was just full-on normal human being. I actually want to imagine that her hair was like a dirty blonde. I have this thing when it comes to my sideboards. For some reason, I just want to turn their hair white, because I imagine that for some reason their hair is still trying to grow and trying to be there, but it's having a hard time growing properly and getting the pigment and stuff, so it just sort of turns white. I don't know why that's a thing that I've decided in my head, but if you watch if you've been on my channel a while, I did actually have just a random cyborg creation that I had. I forgot her name right now, but yeah, she was a cyborg, and I made her hair be white. It was black, but after becoming cyborg and having robotic pieces and parts attached to her, her hair turned white. This is a thing that is, like, canon in my Sims now. Like, no matter what series it is, that's just a thing. But before all of that, you know, she was just going out and doing some dances, getting some money. It was the fastest way for her to get quite a bit of money saved up. She did eventually want to try adventuring and, like, training her muscles and skills and things like that. And she started doing a little bit of that on the side while doing her dances and stuff like that. But it wasn't, like, a main focus, and it wasn't a thing that she had, at the time, a whole lot of time for. You know, she was keeping that in mind, and that was always a goal she was aiming towards, but at the beginning, she was trying to save up as much money ahead of time as possible. Now, she did have one customer who constantly came back over and over and over and over again. And I never really fully decided on a gender for this said customer. I sort of look as Amara herself being more on the street side, but this individual, you know, that's a different individual, so, like, depending on how I was playing her, or if I was playing her and stuff like that, that would be something the DM could decide, if it was a male or a female, but we're just gonna say customer for now. They would constantly come back, and they became sort of obsessed with Amara, and eventually they did actually follow her after one of her shifts, late at night, in an alley, basically use something along the lines that would be like chloroform. I don't know if D&D would have had a version of that. Also, on a side note, I do not think that, I think having stuff like this as their backstories is fine, but I don't approve of players trying to do this thing themselves during the campaign. That is just wrong. Being a part of someone's backstory is fine. One, you know, when you're playing D&D, you're actually role-playing and you're describing things and talking about things. That's just not right. Their backstories, it's their backstory. It was in the past, like, it's something that led them to be what they are now, and it wasn't an actual player, and it's not going to be played during the game. So that's just my random thoughts on that. But anyway, back to Amara's story. So she was basically kidnapped. She was taken back to this place, and this person was also someone who liked to experiment a whole lot. And ultimately, they thought Amara was absolutely beautiful. They loved her, like they had this thing for her, but they started getting this feeling of like, I can make her prettier. I can make her even prettier. So, and they began sort of experimenting on Amara, and that's how she ultimately got her robotic arm and the robotic leg. Now, at this time, Amara was sort of getting depressed, but eventually she kicked herself out of it. She's like, no, I'm gonna fight this. I'm gonna get free. I'm gonna get out of this. I know what they look like. Like, I'm gonna get them in trouble. Like, I'm gonna do something so that this person can't hurt the next person. And ultimately, in that realization, the person who had got her realized that she was becoming a little bit more confident and getting free, confident with herself. Her robotic limbs were actually sort of helping her get stronger now that they have been attached to her. And they had a, like, oh crap moment. This is gonna be bad. So basically, before Amara could fully get her confidence and strength up going so that she could break free and get this person in trouble and all that stuff, they actually sort of, once again, sort of knocked her out, but took her to a random spot in a random city and just sort of dumped her there. And was like, hopefully she never finds me. I put her in a totally different city. Like, maybe she'll just leave me alone, and they left. Now, around the same time, two lovely individuals had made their way into this city trying to find some information about stuff, and happened to glance down a particular alley where they saw Amara just sort of there. She was not fully awake, but she was starting to wake up. She was sort of shaking, like she didn't know. Even if you were building up this confidence, now you're in a new place, you don't know where you're at, you don't have any money, and, you know, she's been in, like, the same clothes or, like, just hand-me-down clothes for a long time now. Like, she's just sort of left out. You would feel vulnerable probably no matter what, but Drax and Shamira was there to lend her a hand. And, like, this whole group, the whole aesthetic is like, yeah, they've had some things happen to them, and maybe, like, some people would look at them weird, or society would think of them as lower, for whatever reason, but they work together, they help each other out, they're there for each other, they understand each other's past, makes them who they are, but it doesn't 100% define them. So that is the whole, like, thing of this group. So yeah, that was her backstory. I should have already had the check for you people who were didn't want to hear about the backstory and you wanted to come back and listen to the rest of it. So yeah, that's the whole, like, sort of fit for this group and how that I see them. You know, they ended up coming together. Now there's 3 of them. There is gonna be 2 more, and we'll get into their stories. Their stories aren't quite as tragic as these 3 that have done Drax, Shamara, and Amara. So I will tell you, those is not quite as tragic. So we'll get a little from the sadness for a bit with those two. But I like Amara. I will say I love her drawing a lot more. I struggled to get her to look the way I wanted, and in the screenshots you'll notice I actually do change her outfit. She is one of them that I changed something after the fact, because I came across this outfit when making the next female character. After her, I came across it by accident, and I was like, this would have worked better for, yeah, it's long sleeves, and I don't technically have long sleeves on her, especially since, you know, her one arm is robotic, and it's got the steampunk feel, so, you know, it's got stuff sticking out everywhere. Putting a long sleeve on that thing would not really go well. But for the purpose of Sims, the outfit had more of the aesthetic and feel that I wanted for her. Like that almost more steampunk vibe for her going on. With Amara, I also really wanted her to look very tiny. She looks like she's very skinny and tiny and stuff like that. But she does have muscles, and I think I didn't make her sim quite as tiny as I sort of wish I would, looking back on it. Because the whole thing with her is she's got this giant sword. And she is so tiny, but she wields it like it's nothing. Also, with Drax, he's a revenant, so technically he doesn't fully die until his purpose is complete. So they just sort of get conked out if they lose their hit points. I would imagine if for some reason he's the only one in the group that loses their hit points and, you know, he conks out for a bit before he wakes back up. She's the one carrying him because she's like the only one who can carry him, this huge, muscly, dragonborn guy who's dead weight because he's conked out right at the time. And I imagine that in my head, like she's just super strong, but she doesn't look it. Like doesn't look like she appears and you're like, oh, she's not gonna beat me up. And then like 5 minutes later, you're regretting those words. Now, as far as her in Sims, I did give her the computer whiz aspiration partially because computer whiz and like the computers and stuff like that is like the closest thing I can get to have some of that more of that cybernetic feel to her. She is also a dance machine, romantic, music lover, active, and non-committal. She doesn't mind having relationships, but she doesn't want to commit. But the main ones that I chose for her, just in case, because like I've been talking about, there's a mod that I'm hoping to use to give them 5 traits to give them as much personality when they get put into this house as possible. But if not, her main 3 are dance machine, non-committal, and active. See how she fits into the house. Let me know what you think of Amara down in the comments below. Is she one of your new favorites? Is there still one of the previous ones that you really, really like? I love Amara, and I just want to picture her as like one of the best role models to have. Like, she's so confident and so like not letting things weigh her down and stuff like that. That's just sort of the feel that I have for her. Like, the way she acts and the way her personality is, you probably wouldn't guess that she's been through something traumatic. That's sort of what I want. I don't want her to be like this ultimate tragic story and like she lets it weigh on her mind for the rest of her life. No, she moves on. She does better. She picks herself up and grows from it. And she wants to sort of help others go that way. So if she ever runs into people who have been in different situations and stuff like that, she wants to sort of help pick them back up. And the same with, you know, Shamar with the boy. So those two are like, it's okay, bad things happen, but you can be amazing. That is sort of them. Like, they'll double team, they'll like to cheer you up. Just don't make them mad. But the thing is if you're a victim of bullying or something else, they definitely wouldn't do that, but I'm just saying, they can hurt people when they need to, but that would be people that are more likely the bullies or the bad person. So, yeah, anyway. But I'm gonna end this episode here. I hope you enjoyed this video and are looking forward to seeing more of the D&D creations. I believe Amara is number 13. She the 13th character? I believe she is. So yeah, and we still have quite a few more to go still. My brain just like completely froze there. You may not be able to tell because of the way I'll edit the video, but yeah, my brain had a hardcore freeze moment. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Make sure you subscribe, like, all that lovely YouTube goodiness, and I'll hopefully see you in the next one. But until then, bye bye!